Hello, my name is Randall Zindler. I'm the Vice Chairman of the YPO Planet Network. And today we celebrate Earth Day. For the last 50 years, on April 22nd, we've acknowledged that there's been quite a bit of destruction that's happened due to human presence in this world, but also a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship to solve some of the grand challenges of our time. And Earth Day does shed light on those issues, the negative and also the positive. And so the Planet Network today is celebrating this this special day by hosting William Kamkwamba. And William, you may know of because of his story that's been shared first in book form, where he's the co-author of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, but also more recently through Netflix, through the film. So, William, we're excited that you're with us today, and I'll share just a couple of sentences about who you are, but I think actually you'll be going into much more depth to tell your story in a few moments, and then some questions will come in to enrich the conversation today. So, William, we know that you were brought up in central Malawi, and of course, during the drought in 2001, some ideas came to your mind, and it was really out of necessity. The community was in a seriously vulnerable place. Your family was in a vulnerable place. And some ideas came, of course, to bring power that would enable you to pump water to the drought-stricken area where you could grow crops. And that is essentially the start of the story of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Of course, later you went on to Dartmouth and received a degree there. And you've been very much involved as a mover in the social innovation space and entrepreneurship to address social issues, environmental issues, specifically in Africa. So let that be the very brief introduction. And let me say this then, there's many people that are listening now, and questions may come up. So go ahead and send those through. You should have a chat mechanism which will enable you to send those through, and I will grab those and at the right time inject that into the conversation. So that is our start and some instructions to those listening, and a thanks to all that have been involved in bringing this to us today, and to the Planet Network of YPO. So William, tell us a little bit more about what it was like to grow up in Malawi at that time, in sort of the late 90s, early 2000, in that time period. What were some of the challenges? What was it like? Your parents, siblings, friends, school? Just bring us back there to that time.
Thank you, Land. It's really great honor to be here on the Earth Day having like this conversation. Growing up in Malawi, we experienced a lot of challenges. Some of those challenges there, when I was young, I really couldn't really tell where exactly they were coming from, because I grew up in a farming community. My parents are farmers. As it is in Malawi, almost 80% of the population are farmers. So farming, it's land-fed agriculture. So with the climate change, each and every year, farmers are struggling. Some years you find you have a lot of land. Some years you have like a drought. It's really difficult to balance out as a farmer, that your whole livelihood would depend on the land to be able to grow the crops. So when I was growing up, I didn't realize that all those problems were happening just because of some of the climate change that is happening around the world. But it was very difficult because my parents, we have to grow enough food in order to feed us, and also to be able to find if they are lucky, they can have like access that they can be able to sell some of the crop, and then have enough money to send to school. So those were the challenges growing up. But apart from those challenges, my lifehood, like the younghood, it was very great, because I had like little good friends that I used to hang out, to play pretty much a lot of the games that a lot of young people all over the world always play to entertain themselves.
Right. So you had hardships, which you explained, but you also had joys, and some of the hardships were on scarcity, very little reserves. I suppose not only money, but also for seeds, perhaps. Will you have enough to plant the next year? And this seasonality and uncertainty.
It's it's always like challenging. It was always like challenging because if also you want to plant the next year, you always need to go buy a proper seeds to plant. And if any given year you didn't have enough crop, good yield, then it can impact you the following years like a crop because you don't have enough money to buy a proper one. So you can just plant any seeds you can get your hands into, which causes a lot of like challenges among farmers in Malawi.
William, thinking back to the movie or your book, but many probably on the call now will have seen the film. Are there one or two scenes that somehow touched you perhaps when you saw the movie the first time that really struck you emotionally? And could you take us back to those scenes and maybe share with us a little bit deeper around that story?
When they actually like the windmill worked, one of that scene, it's always very like to me, I have always like emotion about it because when I started building the windmill, a lot of people were laughing at me. They didn't really believe that what I was doing it's gonna actually work. So when actually the windmill actually work, that was very like joyful moment for me because I've worked for it for a long time trying to figure out. It wasn't just I was joy because I was pleasing the people that they were laughing at me long, but I was joy because it actually work and it solved the problem that we are facing at that time. So that was one of the scenes that I always, when watching the movie, I always like remember about it, which is like to say that whenever I watch the movie, to me, I have like these two mixed feelings because when I'm watching the movie, I'm reliving the past, that some of the past that was very exciting and some of the past that was very painful to relive that past, that what we went through with my family. But seeing that moment of actually the windmill work, it's one of the joyful moments in the movie that when I'm seeing it.
I can imagine. Myself, when I saw that, you know, I watched that with my family, and we all had tears in our eyes of excitement and joy. We were with you in that, so that really resonated with us as well. And I think we can see that on the camera now, a picture of the actual that you sent in of the actual windmill. So obviously, you know, when there's a film, there's the director, the producer has to have some license to adapt things for various reasons. Was the windmill that was produced in the movie and the one that you produced, are they very similar? And are there any other elements that were actually diverged from the movie, or would you say it's really very close to how it really happened for you?
It's very close how it happened to, but I think the challenging of trying to make a movie out of the book or out of the story, you always see, you can't make a movie that is say like 5 hours long. Nobody's really gonna watch that movie. So as the directors, they have to make a decision. How do you compress everything to make sure that every like story comes out the way it's supposed to come out? So I really like recommend the way that they did to bring up like the story the way it happens. So the way they build the windmill in the movie, it's pretty much close to the same way I built the windmill, the first windmill that I built.
William, so you had this idea to build a windmill, but as we've seen, not everyone fully believed in that. You had some challenges. What gave you the strength, the personal strength, to continue to pursue that dream, that idea? Was it parents? Was it your education? Was it your faith? Was it friends? What gave you that foundation to push on through the challenges?
I was like inspired by my grandmother. In Malawi, there's this division of labor. They say like this is for men, this is for women. one of the labor that is considered to be for men, it's making bricks. If you want to build a house, it's, of course, it's a very tough job. A lot of people expect, a lot of people think that only men can be able to do this work. But my grandmother started making bricks by herself. A lot of people are asking her, why are you doing this instead of your husband? Her response really inspired me. She said that when you are caught on fire, you don't wait for somebody to put it off. You are the one who first feel the heat, and you are the one who's going to be trying to put off that fire. And then other people might see you along that you are struggling. They can come along and help you put off that fire. So what she was referring that when you are in trouble, you have a problem, you know your problem better than anyone else. And you should always try to come up with a solution to solve your problems. So at that time, I thought that we had that problem. I had to come up with ideas that I can be able to solve the challenge that we are facing. That's what really gave me courage. But also by seeing the picture of the windmill in the book, that also inspired me that somebody else somewhere in the world was able to build this windmill. If this windmill was built by a human being like me, there's nothing that can stop me from achieving the same thing. So that's the combine of those two really encouraged me that I can still be able to do it.
You took responsibility, of course, but you learned from others, and you were informed by the insights of others, of course, through this book. You didn't, it sounds like there wasn't a place for a lot of coaching and mentoring and any programs around you. It was really just taking this maybe rather worn out book, printed many years before, and trying to find a way to put that into action. And as you did you find that your challenges increased or decreased?
There was a lot of like challenges because even though I was able to find the book in the library that had like information, but the information in the book, they didn't say how you're going to be able to build the windmill, what type of materials you need to use. So I have to find my own way, my own materials, and the challenges that I didn't have money to just go to a shop or to a hardware store to buy them. I had to find what I could find in the local area to be able to use. So some of the materials or the tools I have to improvise with what I could get my hand on. So that was the challenge, was trying to accumulate all the tools that I need and all the materials that I needed for the windmill.
So huge messages there around resourcefulness and innovation. And if you can't find it or buy it, then make it, which was the way you took. How did you know it was work? So in the film, there's this scene where you're standing up on top and you've hooked the wires together, and you seem so confident that this would work. Well, but we know that the smallest break in an electrical connection will mean it just won't work, right? And looking at those wires, there was a lot of opportunity for failure, but you knew it would work. How did you know?
I knew that it could work because I played around with the dynamos, with the generators before. So I knew that as much as all the wiring are done like properly, and you are spinning the generator, you can always like generate power. So I think that knowledge that I had encouraged me that it can still work. And also before I actually built the bigger windmill, I started with the prototype windmill and seeing how it was working. That was also like even more courage to me that it would be able to work.
I don't know if this was at play really in a practical way, but we saw in the film there was this interplay between traditional African beliefs and the Muslim faith and the Christian faith, all at play in your community there. Can you say a little bit more around that and how there was this coexistence of these three faiths?
It's like people always like tolerate like each other, respect each other's like beliefs. So growing up in Malawi, I haven't seen any problem of people from different like faith, different religion, like having like a problem of like fighting, because they're all like they always like work together very well. So it's they either like it's a tradition, people respect them, and the either it's like Christian respect them, Muslim respect them. So I think growing up, some part of like my mother's side, part of like the family, they are like Muslim, so people interact with one another. They haven't have like any problem.
Hmm. Well, thinking about your dream that was realized then you went on to make uh, more windmills in the area. And of course, there was a visit to the United States, and there was exposure to Dartmouth University, and your engagement afterwards now in being a social entrepreneur. Um, how did your story first get out, which enabled you to really move beyond your immediate community and out into the world? How did the story emerge? And then how was that for you to actually visit other places and travel?
So the first like my story was the made from once I made the windmill, because I was borrowing the books at the library, and the library was funded by one of the NGO in Malawi. So the librarian was able to see the windmill, and the organization that started the different libraries, they were trying to see all the libraries. That's when they visited my library, and once they came, they saw the windmill, and they bring some journalists to my village to see the windmill. And one of the journalists wrote an article, and that article was picked up by one of my friend, and he put on his blog, and that blog was picked up by one of the guy was organizing the TED conferences. So I was invited to attend the TED conferences. So during my visit at the TED conference, that's when I made like some friends, some mentor who started like mentoring me. We started we started the blog, letting what I was doing. So that's how like the story started getting like spread around the world, and having a chance to also to write a book, offer the book with Brian Miller, even actually get like even more spreading the story. So that's how exactly how it started. But when when I was building the windmill at the first place, I didn't even imagine that one day I could be even like here, talking to you, talking about like talking on this day, on the Earth Day, which is also like the one of the challenge that we are facing. It's because of the climate change that we need to think how our Earth, how we take care of the environment in this world.
William, did you make the link back then between probably not Earth Day, but climate change, climate issues? Had you seen degradation of the climate and its impact around you when you were growing up? And had you been exposed to any concepts around climate impact back then?
Yeah, back then I didn't realize what was happening, but I used to hear like stories from my parents, my grandparents talking about like the weather. Like back in the days, they used to predict when the rain is gonna come, and they used to know when the rain is gonna stop. So it was always like predictable. But when I was growing up, that wasn't the case. It's like nowadays, you are just playing for the you just play for good, like that maybe this year it might be like the year that we have enough rain. Some years you have drought, some years you have flooding. So it's never really like being like predictive. So the impact, you're going to be actually being able like to tell, to see like the difference, and also from like listening like to stories from the other people, they actually like know that things are a little like changing, which I think it's just like need like people to work together to find the ways how we're going to be able like to solve and address this type of like challenges.
William, you're probably not the only person at that time in Malawi to have had dreams and to want to make an impact, and in the face of vulnerability and necessity. Have you bumped into others either older or possibly younger, that have been engaged on similar kinds of issues, either with energy or other areas of appropriate technology?
There have been like a lot of like talented young people that they are really like trying to find the ways of addressing the problem that they are facing. Either it's like an environment, trying to figure out to use what they have in order like to address those like challenges. I've met like several people, which is one thing that really like always give me courage and inspires me, is that the talent is universal, but opportunities are not. If you're going to give somebody an opportunity to be able to come up with ideas that they can be able to solve, address issues that they are facing, they can always be able to do that. One time, I went to this school in Malawi. It is almost like 4 hours drive from my village. I talked about my windmill. A year later, when I went there, I found this young guy. He was able to build his own windmill just from listening me from what I did. So if I can see that happening, it means that there are so many other people who can be able like to do that, even if it's not about like windmill, but it can be in other types of like technology as well. They can be able to do it to solve challenges that they are facing.
Yeah, William, in a moment, we'll kind of shift the conversation into what you're doing now and some of the issues of community and impact and climate change in the last part of our conversation. A reminder, if anybody would like to ask a question to William, put that in your chat box and we'll bring that into the conversation. William, the movie took place, I think you're 13, 14 years old. What advice would you give to yourself, if you could, back at that time, to your 13-year-old or 14-year-old self? Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
One advice that I could give to myself, I think, knowing what I know now, first, when I started building the windmill, I think I wish at that time I could communicate better to the people. Maybe sometimes because one thing that I see that people are laughing at me because they didn't know exactly what I was doing, and telling them that I was building the windmill and they have never seen the windmill before, and we don't have even the name for windmill in my language. If I could have had a better way of like explaining to people, maybe that couldn't have been that could have been like a problem. People would have been quickly understand what it was going on. So I think if I could have done that, that would have been the best way of doing it.
Yeah, and the initial inspiration, where did it come from? And that's a question coming from Mark Hamel. Because obviously the story starts really when you're 13, 14, but at what point did you get the initial idea?
So the idea got it like around like the same like time. But growing up, I grew up like being very curious to understand how things work around me. I always trying to figure out how things like operate. I remember asking people, how does the car work? They say, oh, you put in like a fuel and you start the engine and you drive. I'm like, I know that, but how does it work? Nobody could really like tell me. So I think that curiosity of trying to understand how things work really started at a very younger age for me. So when I finally find the picture of the windmill in the book, then that's how I started like trying to figure out how I can be able to use that to be a solution to the problem that we are facing.
Yeah, so learning is key in this, and I think you had learning in an institutional sense in the school, this classroom and books in the library, and of course your own curiosity. And as you look back, the school system didn't work for you because you couldn't afford the fees, as it was shown in the film. Did you put then more energy and emphasis on your own exploration and discovery and learning did that almost override then the institutional learning structure that you were in?
In somehow I can say that, but at that time, I think for me, for the school, I really wanted to get like an education because I didn't want to be like my father to be a farmer. It's not that I didn't want to be a farmer because I hate farming. I love farming, but I didn't want to be a farmer just because that's the only thing that I can do with my life. I wanted to do what I want to do at any point. So to me, it was just any means that I can be able to use to get that education. I would try like to do it, even if it's about like me doing it on my own, rather than just depending on going to school where I couldn't go because of the school fees. I should always try to find the ways how can I be able to continue with my schoolwork at that time.
Yeah, and that you did, of course. William, thinking now around your current dreams, and they've developed more. They're more sophisticated now, of course. What needs? Maybe it's similar to the need that you saw and you felt, and this comes from a question that has been brought in around the needs back then. Are you addressing the same needs now? If so, which ones? Or do you see different needs emerging in Malawi, in Africa, or for our planet?
I'm addressing quite a similar needs now. The challenge that we have in Malawi, it's almost we still have the same challenges. We have 80% of the population are farmers, but each and every year we struggle to feed our population. It's because our farming system, it's not very efficient, and it's also not very exciting for young people. We still do the things the same way that our great grandparents used to do. So one way of addressing this challenge is we are doing what we are doing with the work that we are doing with the Moving Windmills project. We are putting up, we are building the innovation center. The innovation center that it's gonna allow young people have an idea to come and work with us to design a solution to the problem that they are facing. Agriculture, innovation, not building a very sophisticated, big machine. We want to build a simple tools that they can be able to use that can reduce the time that they spend on doing one task over like 80% reduction on the like time spent. That's what we want to do with the innovation center. So far, we have already identified the site and we had the area gift that we have managed to purchase this land that we are going to build the innovation center, and also we have some great architecture that we are working with the mass design group that they are helping us on design this innovation center. That we feel that the innovation center, apart from trying to do a lot of work into agriculture technology, but we're also going to be able to do some other technology that will actually address the challenges that people are facing, either the challenges related to energy, to water, all those work we're going to be able to do at the Innovation Center.
Now, it seems this kind of Innovation Center was not around, wasn't possible for you to tap into when you were younger. It's emerging now and you're part of that. What happened? Why is there more innovation coming out of Africa now? And maybe that's a difficult question to answer. I'm not sure there is a one clear and precise answer. But do you see a shift in this area of innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa from when you grew up to what it is now?
I'm seeing like some shift. I'm seeing like more like innovation coming up, but doesn't mean that back in the days people didn't have like skill. People have had like skills for a long time, but I think just like they didn't have like a lot of like opportunities to be able to develop their skills and their ideas that they want to do to be able to solve some of the challenges that they are facing. But right now, while we are seeing like more and more tech coming out and having like a space where you're going to be able to experiment your ideas. It's going to actually even bring up more innovation into Africa. So I think this innovation center that we are building, I hope it's gonna even like bring up even more innovative people around Malawi and across the continent, because the skills are there, and they're just lacking the tools and also like the space mentorship that they needed to use to be able to come up with those ideas to explore them.
Thanks, William. I actually appreciated in the film, it was about you and your family and your community, and there was not a lot of outside intervention. There were no white faces. There was not money and resource coming into the scene. Maybe there's a place for that, an appropriate time, in an appropriate way, but it wasn't present in the film. And I'm just wondering if you have some thoughts around what good partnership looks like, knowing that sometimes partnership and the acquisition of resources can actually spoil a good idea. Do you have any thoughts around that?
My thoughts around that is like a good partnership. It's trying like the partnership that everybody's respecting one another ideas. I think some of the problem that we always like face is that you can have an idea that I'm gonna be able to solve somebody's problem, but you might not know the main like root cause of that problem. But people are capable of addressing some of the challenges that they are facing. So the partnership that you're actually not imposing solution, but you are working with them, trying to find their also voice, like head what they really want to do and how they can be able like to do it through exchanging that that ideas. You're going to be able to come up with a concrete solution that will address a lot of like problems. So I think that's one thing that I always like think is that if you can give people like a chance, they can be able to, they can read the way of like addressing issues that they are facing. But it has to be equal partnership that needed to be encouraged in order that to be able like to achieve. But also people can be able to borrow ideas from other parts. If you give other parts of the world, if you give them a chance and you share with them what you have done, what you are working on, that type of way, I think it's the way forward.
Thank you, William. Could you share with us maybe some of your own guiding principles or values that have enabled your leadership to thrive? Because certainly in the film, it became clear that you had some innate attributes of leadership at a very young age. And of course, those have flourished over time. What are some of the attributes or principles, I should say, traits that are quite distinctive in your own leadership?
For me, it's like listening in. I always like love to listening in to other people, see what other people are thinking. But it's not just about I have done this type of work and I know it, and no one else can tell me anything. But I always value on listening in and trying to understand how other people's ideas I can be able to add up on my own idea, or I can also add up my ideas to somebody's idea and building on that to greater to achieve a greater things. If I just constrain that my idea they are the only like best ideas, then I can't be able to achieve a lot like in life, because not a one person can manage to do everything by themselves. They need we always need collaboration. It's very important.
William, there's a saying you might know. It's that success is the success of my successors, right? So the trail that I leave behind. Have you do you see a trail behind you of young people, maybe right in your community, people that have also taken up the baton, maybe not in windmills, but something else, or in other communities where you've had a touch point or an influence?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like change in my communities, but also like just the not only like doing it with the wind power or but different types of like projects, seeing people that they have always like telling me like stories that we have been like inspired by you. I dropped out of school, but once I read your story, it inspired me. I'm now actually getting my engineering degree, or I'm getting like my science degree. I'm getting my environmental degrees. It's very like inspiring, like to see people getting inspired. So in Malawi, seeing young people not only doubting themselves, because when I was growing up, we used to have this idea that science can only be done by the people from the West, but that mindset has shifted since every young person say like, if William was able to do this, what can stop me from doing similar, either like in science or in something else? So I'm seeing that like changing is happening.
Yeah, and certainly the adversity we saw, the vulnerability, almost the gambling around the seasonality of harvest and crops and so forth in your own community, meant that you grew up in a context of uncertainty and even with consequences on your health and your family's health. There's a link to today, right, in the COVID world that we live in now with vulnerability. Are you able to draw on those links of the past and apply some principles in the health situation that the world is in right now with the COVID virus?
Right now, it's just to what's going on. It's very difficult like times. It's always like trying to listening in, like getting like advice from what the healthy personnel people are giving out like to people. So trying like to always like encourage people to follow those type of like guideline in terms of trying like to address this problem. Hopefully, hoping that maybe sometime like soon this might be maintained, but it's very like difficult times.
Are you feeling direct impact in your work now, or are you hearing that in the communities that you know well in Malawi?
Yeah, we're being like impacted in Malawi so far. We have 18 cases and the two deaths, and people are still trying to find the ways how we can be able like to reduce the or like to make sure that maintain the spread of the virus in Malawi. It's very like challenging because some of the work that people around the world have been like doing, it's like a lockdown. So to do like lockdown in Malawi, it will be a very challenging. It can be done, but it will be very like challenging because a lot of people depend on the day to day like working in order like to get like food that they can be able to feed their families. But you can also not a lot of people who have access to refrigeration that you can say that you buy food in bags and then being able like to save for 21 days or 30 days. It's almost like impossible. So trying to find out like to balance out how you're going to be able like to do that, it's just like it's very like challenging. So just hopefully that maybe this will be intended before it is spread like a very favor.
Yeah, well, the times, of course, need the kind of resourcefulness and discovery and ingenuity that you've displayed. You're a curious person, William. How do you maintain that curiosity or pursue learning? Do you have a coach or a mentor? Is it through books? How do you continue lifelong learning, William?
I have like some I have a great mentor, but also I always also like try to just like learn what other people are doing. So I get like my inspiration through learning what other people are doing and trying to see. Always when I'm learning, I'm always like trying to see what can I be able like to borrow from here and then being able like to implement in Malawi to solve some of the challenges that people are facing. I'm constantly like learning, constantly trying to figure out what is the next challenge that I can be able like to being able like to solve. So, but because I've identified that I cannot manage to solve every problem by myself, that's why I'm also like we are building this. We want to build this innovation center so that we can be able to give tools and space to other people who will be able like to take on the challenge of addressing some of the issues that people are facing there.
Well, William, you became an entrepreneur initially when you were 13 and you had an idea. There wasn't much budget. There wasn't an approval process. You didn't have to go to a board. Or maybe you had some of those things in a very informal sense. But now you're moving into management systems and decision-making and governance and all of that. How was that journey for you to shift from the very roll up your sleeves, hands-on, your ideas into action that involves you? And now it's really around other people and decision-making processes and emails and all of that. Tell us about that journey.
It's a very like challenging like journey because you have to balancing out. But I think I just like think that there are people who always like try like to support me when I'm like trying to do some stuff, and giving me advice and trying to little for me to see those advice and to see if what I'm trying to do it can be achieved, or if it can't be achieved. But sometimes it's hard to balance out. So one thing that because I always like love like to hear from other people, and I always value those advice that I always like get from other people, and trying to see how I can be able like to implement what I'm trying to implement, adding on the advices, putting them all like to work together, rather than just being that this is my idea, I'm just gonna learn with on like this idea without like listen to what other people are giving out. But I can say that this is what I'm thinking, and getting the advice, I say, okay, this is your advice, but this the reason why I was thinking that way. So feel like conversation at the end of the day, I always like come up, always like trying to find the light balance.
Well, that triggers this question, William. There's quite a bit of news about a lot of the problems in Africa and in the world, of course. How does that strike you? Are you drawn into that, and does it bring out pessimism, or do you have hope? Do you have hope for the climate issues that we face, and do you have hope for the addressing the vulnerabilities of communities within Africa?
Yeah, I have great hope that we'll be able like to solve this problem. But I think the one way that we're going to be able like to address these challenges, it's like to work together, and also people do like a small like projects done one by one, because sometimes I always say that every journey starts with one step. So sometimes people see the problem, seeing that this is a very big problem, that it's out of my hand, I can't be able like to do anything. But one thing that I always argue, if it's like environment, if everybody just take like one step, you don't have to do very big. One person, if they do like they do their part a little bit, and somebody else a little bit. If you add up, say like 5 million people, one person doing just like a simple task, that by multiplying that one person to 5,000, that will be even like, it will be very big. It will have like big impact. So sometimes it's like people we are saying like, this is it's not gonna make any difference because it's just like me. But if you put that in consideration, that you are thinking it's just you, but if everybody else is also like taking part on that, it's gonna actually have a great impact to address the problem that that people are facing. So I'm very like optimistic that once people start taking, I've seen people have already started taking steps to be able to address the environmental, like climate change issues across the continent. So hopefully that will continue. The momentum will pick up to address these challenges.
It sounded like a call to action to me for collaboration, but also we know the saying, be the change that we want to see in the world, and calling us into that. Do you see a shift of, say, young people in their high school graduates, early college entry people, these days now, and the things that interest them, the issues they're pursuing, their lifestyles, do you see that being any different now than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago?
I think things are changing. Are changing a little bit. I might not speak much about like what used to happen 15 years ago in terms of like people going into like universities, because I just get out of college almost like 6 years now. It's almost like 6 years. So, but I think they're still like young people are taking more like. Nowadays, it's no longer the way we used to say like youth are the future leaders. But right now, like I'm seeing like a lot of young people taking more and more of like a leadership position, not necessarily like position in like organization, but leadership mindship that they're also. It's not about like the future, but the future, it's more of like the future. It's now. They needed to be, they're acting on like some of the issues that it's impacting them. I'm seeing like more and more nowadays.
Yeah, well, certainly the topic of responsible leadership are something that my academic colleagues and I are working on at Lancaster University. And we're seeing, of course, a great shift away from the kind of capitalism that we've come to know, where it's all about maximizing shareholder wealth, towards something that's more regenerative, something that considers the customers, the employees, the environment, communities, and so forth. Is that way of thinking within the circles that you're in? Do you see a shift from capitalism as we've known it to something different and more healthy for us?
Yeah, I'm seeing like a lot of people like moving towards that, more of like thinking, taking as like a site ecosystem where like if you do like one thing that is great like to the community's health, and if it's like you are a company, then that is also gonna make sure like those communities that you are making sure that they are well, they're gonna always either like access your service or purchase your product. So I'm seeing nowadays like that shift is happening, seeing people more of like trying to be how you work as like a ecosystem, because you can't just have like a great companies just focusing on the returns without like focusing what exactly the all the other like parts that plays into your system. They are not like part of it. If they are not part of it, then you're just gonna have a big company without having the other part to support the ecosystem or the company.
Well, that's good advice. Speaks to organizational culture, and of course to any leaders that are on the call. That is advice we'll want to heed. William, it's been great to be with us. We'll want to close in just a minute now, but I want to say that on Earth Day, there could not be a better person to have a conversation with than yourself. The impact that you've had has been tremendous. You've heard that many times, but I'll say it again. Not only at the community level where you grew up and with your family, but of course around the world, and that continues. And so we really applaud you today on Earth Day. And the principles that I have drawn out from the conversation for yourself, your personality, are certainly resourcefulness, resilience, being able to bounce back and with courage, facing the unknown, innovation, ingenuity, curiosity, learning, and especially now, these learning systems are under threat or are facing changes. And you faced changes and your learning system was under threat too, but you didn't get stuck. You found ways through it, over it, under it, around it, so that you could continue to build your knowledge and not be stuck because you couldn't attend class. And so I think maybe that's a message to the students out there. I could go on with a list of things I've learned from the conversation. And I want to say thank you again for your spirit of enthusiasm, your entrepreneurial spirit, and then the key principles that you leave with us in the call to action. Might you have one last word for us, advice or a tip or something from your background or a dream you'd like to share?
One advice that I can say, it's like it's everything in this world, it's little like possible. What you have always like to think, it's you just always like try, like you always need to know where you want to be. If you know where you want to be, even though like the journey can be very difficult, you can face so many obstacles in the way, but if you know your point B, living from like point A to point B, even though you face all the obstacles, sometimes what you have to do is to go around it or climb over it to achieve what you're gonna be able to achieve. So I think that's having like in mind that in everything that we do in the world, doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you face some challenges, but don't allow those challenges to take away your goals, because great things are possible if you put your mind into it.
Thank you so much, William. Thank you to those that have helped to organize it, the Planet Network, and to all those that have listened. William, thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.